Yo, G.
Yo, G.
Thanks for the food, yo.
I think it would be more like, yo, G, why you got to do me like this? Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to today's Big Three, where we pray by saying, Yo, G. We're talking Darlington, and a lot of guys, a lot of drivers are going to be praying to God because they're going to have some luck on their side to win this race. Very tough racetrack, Saturday nights, Showtime Southern 500. What do you expect, Buzz Cutler?
Well, it's interesting because I think you got two different kinds of agendas or two different modus operandi in approaching this race. And we've got video from Tony Stewart and we've got video from Jeff Gordon sort of outlining the different approaches. Let's watch.
It's a real driver's track. You know, you have to do tire management. You have to be patient. You got to race the racetrack and not the competition.
You have to work with the other drivers there. You can't. You have to be willing to use give and take there. And there's going to be times when you don't want to give spots up, but you have to.
So on one hand, Tony Stewart says, well, you got to work with the other drivers because it's so narrow. On the other hand, Jeff Gordon says, you can't worry about racing the other guys. You got to race the racetrack.
Well, I know that sounds contradictory, Buzz Cutler, but it's actually not contradictory. Let me break it down for you.
Please do, because you're oh so smart.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the support. You've got a very fast, narrow racetrack here. You got to drive this thing up against the wall. That's the only way you're going to get around it. And you're going up to 170 miles an hour or faster, and you're this far away from the wall. So that is such a challenge that to drive one lap around this track by yourself, you've got to focus purely on what you're doing and racing the track. That's on the one hand. Now, on the other hand, don't forget, there are 42 other race cars out there with you, and you can't just drive around and not be aware of where they are. You've got to manage your relationships with these other guys, and it does not pay to race guys early in the race when you're just trying to survive. So I think that is where those two statements actually do work together. Drive the racetrack, but manage your relationships intelligently with the other cars and the other drivers. Try to stay towards the front, keep your track position, keep up with the racetrack, and be there at the end when you're going to have to race these other guys on a very narrow racetrack.
You know, and it's never been more of a driver's track than it is right now because since the repave, Darlington doesn't eat your tires up, and a driver can manage those tires a little bit better and have a little bit more control over their own fate than in the classic Darlington.
Well, I'm going to disagree a little bit in that when the car slid around a lot of these drivers felt that made it more of a driver's track because there was more onus on you to manage your tires, and there was more slipability on the old Darlington. The car would really slide, and you'd see guys come in and put on new tires, and they'd be 3 seconds faster, 3 to 4 seconds faster than the guys that were already out there. Now, you're gripping, and then when the car starts to lose grip, it's a little more slidability than you had before, but it's still that phenomenon of I'm stuck, and now I start to feel like I'm wrecking. So I think it's a very tricky track to drive right now, and don't forget, too, that the two ends of the racetrack are different. It's shaped a little bit like an egg, kind of like your head. So
I have much more of a rectangular.
So getting the car to handle at both ends is also a challenge for these guys. There are no fluky winners here.
You're not going to get your car to handle perfectly at both ends. You're going to have to compromise on one end or the other, just like a Richmond or, you know, obviously like a Pocono. You can't get your car set up perfectly for this track all the way around.
Yeah, I mean, Phoenix is a classic example, too, of a track that's different at either end of the speedway. But I think this is just a track where there's a high degree of driving skill required, and that's why you see the big names come out here and win this race. There aren't fluky winners here. You got to have a serious talent level to conquer this racetrack, and that's why Denny Hamlin's win last year was so very impressive. And when we think about drivers, I come back to the guys we saw last week, Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch. Denny has the best finishing average here, and Kyle Busch has one here, and he's looking very solid to me these days.
Yeah, but you know who else you got to consider? A guy
Jeff Gordon,
who has been in the top three 50% of his times racing at Darlington, Jeff Gordon.
7 wins.
7 wins, never on the new surface, though. Don't know that that's a big deal. I still think Jeff Gordon can get it done at Darlington.
I do, too, but I think maybe his advantage on the older surface was greater.
What about the Roush Fenway guys? They're pretty good here. Biffle's good here. He's won here.
Greg Biffle is good here, and I think it'll be very interesting to see. Don't forget, this is a very fast racetrack, so the FR9 power they've been enjoying should come in very handy here. We know Carl Edwards is having a great year. How about David Reagan? If David Reagan could back up his past couple weeks' performance with another good run, I think he may say he's got something with Drew Blickensderfer. We kind of suspected he had it last year. He's showing me a little something. I like to see a new guy up towards the front.
If I remember correctly, he does have one top 5 at Darlington. I'll have to double-check that, but I seem to remember one top 5 for David Reagan at Darlington.
Tony Stewart's never won here. He's such a talented driver. You got to believe he's going to win here.
All right, well, we could name lots of guys. Who do you pick?
I like Kyle. I just like Kyle to win it for the second week in a row. I feel like he's on his game right now. This is a driver's track. He's got the talent to handle it. I think he knows what it takes. He's won here before, so I'm going to go with Kyle Busch.
Interesting stat about Kyle Busch, nationwide stat, one of 3 tracks at which he's started at least 5 nationwide races, yet has failed to secure a victory in the nationwide series.
And yet he's won here in a Cup car.
Yeah. I'm going with Jeff Gordon. I think, he's the original 4-time. He's won here 7 times, finishes in the top 3 on a fairly regular basis. I think he can get it done this weekend.
All right, you got Jeff, I got Kyle. That has been your Rowdy.com Big 3. Do join us at Rowdy.com to talk about this race and many other racing topics.
And thank you to Goodyear for sending us a Support Our Troops tire. Very few of these made. We have one of them.
We have one. And we will see you next time right here on the Rowdy Big 3.
Rowdy.com. Say it like it is.
Say what like it is?
Rowdy.com.